In the previous video, we designed our how our interface should look like. Now we are going to go into the code side of things. Okay. So to go to that, we're going to go to our main activity.kt. Now, when you come onto this screen, don't panic. What we're seeing is Kotlin. Now in Kotlin, how we inherit properties and methods from a parent class is this colon here. So this main activity is just a class, but it inherits this app compact activity, which is what gives us access to this onCreate method. Inside that, we have some super onCreate, and then we're setting the content view to our activity main. So you can see here that what we have here is we have this set content activity main. So what we're doing is we're saying that when the application is launched, what we need to do here is we need to set the screen, the layout to the activity main. Okay. So what we want to do here today is we want to be able to, when we enter our username, we enter our password, and we click on the button, we want it to do something, which is what we want it to do. So what we're going to do is we need to now get the references, or we need to have a reference to our view objects in order to code it. So how do we do that? Well, the equivalent of what we in HTML, anytime we want to add JavaScript to HTML, is documents.getElement by ID. So you get the element by the ID. In Android, we have something similar called FindViewById. So I'm going to use FindViewById to find all the elements that are going to be on the screen to the user. So remember, this set content view, r.layout.activity main means that we have a resource file, where we have a class, a resource folder. So think of this folder, right? And then we have in there, we have connected to this layout, and then we have the activity main. So we need to now find all our elements inside the activity main. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to create some variables and store that reference of that view inside that variable so that we'll be able to have access to it. So there are several ways you can do it. For the purpose of this train, I'm going to use just one. So we have var, right? And then I'm going to call the first thing that we created was our buttons. We don't need to worry about the sign in, because that sign in is just a label at the moment. It's a text view, it's a label. But what we need here is we need to get access to the username and the password. So how I'm going to do this is var. In Kotlin, you can either create the variable before or you can create afterwards. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to create it. So var, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do edt username equals FindViewById, and then it tells me that I need to specify the kind of class or whatever it is. So I'm just going to put edit text. The reason why we're using edit text is because edit text is a class, so I need to import it. So Android has imported it for me here, that class, so that I'll be able to use edit text. Then inside of here, I need to specify resource.id. Remember, every time we create an ID, the ID is saved. Remember that every ID is usually saved as an integer, but it has a name under it. So when we click on ID, we're not using layouts, because layout is for the activity main when we want to get access to the layout. What we're actually looking for is IDs. So I'm going to type in ID dot, then you will see that it has EDT username, EDT password. But a good thing to check is on the right-hand side is an integer, but you don't see that. Under the hood is an integer. So what I'm going to select is my EDT username. Okay. Now in Kotlin, you don't need to add a semicolon at the end of it, but I like doing it because I also code in Java. So when I code in Java, I don't forget to do it. I don't want it to be a practice because I'm usually coding in Java as well, but you don't have to. And another thing is, again, I'm going to repeat the same process for my password, because remember, we need to have a reference to our username, and we also need to have a reference to our password. And now I've got my username, so I need to get my password. So the next thing I need to do is edt password equals FindViewById edit text r.id.edt password. Then I also need to get my buttons. Okay, I need to get my buttons. So to get my buttons, what I need to do is, again, the same procedure, btn login equals FindViewById edit text, and then we have r.id.edt button. Actually, it's not meant to be edit text, it's meant to be button. And then we need to import it. So every time you see this, it's telling you that there is a class that you can use for this, but you haven't imported it. So Android tells you to click on alternative enter. So when you click on alternative enter, what it will do is it will import it for you. So it's imported it right here for me. So at this stage, what do we have here? Well, we have been able to get references. We've been able to have access now to our EDT username and password. Now we want it to do something. We want our button login to do something. So how do we do that? Well, we want to attach an event handler to it. Okay. We want to attach a set on click listener to it so that when I click on my button, it does something. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do BT and login. And I always tell people, because it's a class, there are some methods associated in that class. It's like creating a class and creating some functions or methods inside. So we have access to some methods every time we use a class. Now, this BT and login, if you want to know what are some of the methods that comes along with this button class, you just hit dot. I always call it the power of the dot, right? When you hit it, it gives you several things that can work alongside this class. So you have access, autofill, background, whatever you want to use. But the one we're looking for is set on click listener. Okay, so I'm just going to click on, I'm just going to hit my tab button, and then I have a set on click listener. And then you will see here that I now have access to a set on click listener. So what this means that I've attached an event to my button login. So in case I want my button login to do something. So what do I want it to do when I click on the button login? Well, the first thing I want it to do is I want it to check, because there's a lot of validations to check here. There's a lot of validations to check here, right? You want to check if the user has entered anything inside of your username or password, because what you don't want is a person to click login and then you're saying username and password does not match. Well, if the person hasn't entered anything, how can we even compare anything? So we want to give a message back to the user and tell the user that, listen, you need to enter something. This is currently empty. So how do I do that? Well, we have if and else statements, right? We have conditions. So we want to set some conditions. We want to say if the username or the password empty, if they're both, if any of them is empty, we want to tell the user, listen, mate, you need to behave, okay? Enter something inside the username and the password. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to, first of all, I will need to get what the user has entered first and then check it if it's empty or it's not empty, okay? So to do that, I'm going to create two strings, okay? And these strings are going to be the username and the password, and it's going to store whatever the user has entered or to check if it's empty. So to do that, I'm just going to create var str username, and then I'm going to do edt username. Okay, what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to stop this video so that it can be broken down into smaller chunks for us to be able to use. So I will see you in the next video.